Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I want to make sure we have the interpreters here. All right, great. We got the interpreter on. Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our very last virtual meeting, last meeting of the year, the school year, I should say. Hard to believe, right? Wow. Countless meetings we've had this year. I gotta do an actual count. I haven't done that just yet, but I know we've had numerous meetings. June 3rd will be our final town hall meeting where we will be able to convene in David Gleason, our superintendent of CEASD or president of CEASD, and I will present on various topics as to what we've done throughout the year. And we will do some forecasting as well. So very exciting times. Really looking forward to June 3rd. Hope all of you can join us. Great. So now, before we go ahead and introduce our presenters for today, we'd like to first express our gratitude to this fabulous group, fabulous Sorensen that we've got here. Thank you for Sorensen support. You guys are fantastic. Thank you so much for supporting our conference, our leadership academy. Oh my goodness, you guys are supporting everything and everything. Oh my goodness. So thank you to Sorensen. You guys have been outstanding. I'm gonna turn the floor over to you. And give me 1 second. I wanna, yeah, they've got a video that they're going to share. So Jennifer, please take the floor here.
Yes, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And you said it right. It's been madness this whole school year, especially due to the pandemic. You know, prior to this, I'm sure we didn't expect our schools to change as much as they did, and leadership in deaf education. So hats off. Kudos to all of you, our unsung heroes. I do recognize our frontline workers, healthcare workers and all, but let's not forget all of the hard work that you all do and all of the challenges you've faced. And our students as well, of course, working from home and virtual learning, all of the communication accommodations that have had to happen that we'd never even think of prior to the pandemic. So yes, it definitely was a learning curve, if nothing else. And Sorensen has also experienced so many changes throughout. So we're here to continue to support and make sure that our students, more than anyone, has communication and access to communication. So again, great job. Hats off. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Fowl, and I'm the district manager for Sorensen Relay. Our company, you may have noticed, has at least changed our colors to blue, aside from many other changes that the company has made, including services that are provided. So I'd like to show you a video, and after that, talk a little bit more about what's going on with Sorensen and all of our changes, and how we can continue our support for all of you, your schools. Talk about this new normal post-pandemic, whatever we're calling it these days, and just see if we can get ourselves back on track. But I wanted you all to have an opportunity to learn more about our services. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, give me a minute. I've got it. It's a 3-minute video, so let me just see if I can set that up. All right, there we go.
We can see your PowerPoint. We don't see your, oh, never mind. There it is. We can see your video now. Great. Okay, it looks like you're going to have to rewind. Jennifer, the video started right there in the middle.
No, it's a 20-minute video, so I clipped it. That's where it's going to start.
Oh, okay, great.
So the pandemic related to wave low, prior to all of that, March of 2020, we had planned on releasing then that thereafter in the fall, but we saw the importance of communication and access, for families and students and everyone working from home to meet with their teachers. Again, just to have access, visual and communication, learning more about how to proceed during the pandemic. We decided then to send this out sooner than later. So I'm not sure if you have received an email from the district manager, but just so you know, we're here to support you as you go back to school. And we, of course, are hoping that things will be better in the fall. This new normal that I talk about, I don't know, but there's definitely so much that we've learned, working from home and learning from home, that we've had to change some things for sure. So I would like to say thank you in advance and ask if there are any questions.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to our community. We really appreciate it. And if any of you have questions, please feel free to type them up in the chat. And I'm sure most of you have Jennifer's direct contact information. You can reach out to her personally so that she can respond to any further questions. Again, appreciate it, Jennifer.
Yes, of course. And there's actually one more thing. Donna Mahoney sends her sincere and warm greetings, and keep in mind she's another contact person, on that long list of people that you have to contact at Sorensen.
Oh, great. Well, tell Donna the entire team at CEASD is saying hello.
Sure.
And support.
Oh, yes, we'll do. Have a wonderful conference, a wonderful workshop. Enjoy your summer. Take care.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, let's go ahead and introduce our presenters for this afternoon. Again, we're asking that you turn off your videos. The interpreters will be turning off their videos as well fairly soon. In just a moment here. The presenters, again, if you have any questions, it's most convenient, just draft them in the chat, and we'll be showing video, and you can ask questions through video after you indicate in the chat. If you want to voice a question, that's great. We'll have an interpreter unveil themselves, and we will do a side-by-side screen there if that's the case, if you'd like to use your voice to ask your question. Sarah, looks like she's still dealing with some technical issues here. So she is asking for a minute or two. That's fine. Sure. Let's go ahead and introduce our two presenters here. Hopefully we'll have this issue resolved by the time I'm done doing so. All right, Sarah is the CEO of the Learning Center. Sarah's been in healthcare education, technology, nonprofit for over 20 years at this point. Also, RID certified interpreter. Sarah also serves on the board of CEASD as treasurer there. And just Massachusetts Commission Status of Women, connected to my student's presentation. So it looks like we have a little connection there with the student presentation. Nice. Second presenter, Kyle Amber Clark. She born and raised in Maryland. However, just relocated to the Learning Center as their new Officer of Diversity, Equity, and let me make sure I'm getting this right. Chief Officer of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And she's very passionate in the counseling field for many, many years, and looks forward to making the Learning Center a pleasant environment and inclusive of all people. That's the ultimate goal, their mission. And it is my pleasure it looks like technology is working on their end. So great. Let's welcome Sarah and Amber here. You guys, they've got a great program this afternoon, so enjoy. All right, just want to make sure we spotlight you. All right, go ahead. Are we allowed to share the screen? Sure. And I told individuals if they have a question, they can go ahead and share their video. You guys can respond to those questions, or if they feel more appropriate to type that up in the chat, they can do that as well. So you guys have both options there. Okay, well, hello, everyone.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we were ready to connect and then lost all ability to do so, but I'm glad it worked out. Here we are. Should we just go ahead and introduce ourselves now? Hi, Sarah Glenn Smith, CEO at the Learning Center. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Kyle Amber Clark.
Yes, Kyle Amber Clark, again, Chief Officer of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion here at the Learning Center. All right, so should we go ahead and start sharing our video?
So I just want to make sure if everyone can see the screen.
Okay, good. What a relief. Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and start. We've talked a lot nationally regarding equity, Black Lives Matter, and the buzzword CDO, equity, inclusion, diversity. And it's just all of this has popped up, and we see the need as to what this means to the Learning Center. Many have asked, what do I do? How do I go about? And that's what's so unique about this organization. Many of your experiences as school administrators, school leaders, you have your experience, but in our field, we're dealing with families, clinicians, the community, mental health. There are also other schools. For example, the Marie Phillips School for the Deaf, as to how this applies to residential programs. We have advancements, residential treatment programs, etc. Just so that the entire organization, if you will, the full gamut, and how it will, how inclusion is a part of this and making it feel so much special, making it stronger, becoming a model, a national model for other schools. So, we can't do this without the community. And so the significance of that partnership, school, community, and family, is key. And bottom line, we're looking at the themes, how to present within the classroom, not only, but what about our families? Our children come to school bringing in their culture, their experiences, their very powerful stories. Again, key to inclusion and that sense of belonging. Super important. And that's something that we definitely want to review with all of you today. Myself, I know who I am and where I'm from, but then we have to think about our children, that sense of belonging, those who don't come from families who speak English, who are not proficient in sign. So the stakeholders are the ones that we want to really think about, and having those conversations, that very critical conversation.
Let's go ahead and proceed to the next slide here. Okay, so I did want to speak to this before Kyle Amber here last year, but I guess it was roughly a year and a half ago, where we really truly started to recognize the power of testimony, right? The power of these stories. And we began to ask, and there was this common denominator within these stories. As a new leader at the Learning Center, as a new white hearing leader at a deaf organization, oh, it is so multifaceted here. In terms of these conversations that I'm having, I do see this one commonality. There's something missing here. We have not taken the time or opportunity to ask if these experiences are similar or different. And we're realizing how similar they are. And that was the beginning of us needing to pull in a new leader so we can begin to unpack, so that we can start this new trajectory, this new journey within our organization. We didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know a lot. Wow, lots of lessons learned as this new title, CEO, and we started to realize, okay, I've got me, but I've also have these other leaders, all of us, except one were white, one. And I realized we are not the people that should be talking about what, equality looks like. We don't have that comprehensive understanding. We don't ask those appropriate questions. What does that look like now? Having that full transparency. How can we get transparent answers if we are not those people? So we started to talk about this more at the board level. And I have to stress, board support is so important here. We didn't even scratch the beginning until we had that, commitment, when we really publicized that commitment, when we put ourselves out there. That's holding us accountable. Now everybody's watching. Are you willing to be that vulnerable, to show your successes and failures and everything in between, to show that, to be transparent, to deepen our ability as an organization? And it doesn't just take one. It's not just myself, nor just Kyle Amber, and then thinking about all of our families and all of our staff. It's impossible. How do we shift the DNA within the organization to demonstrate to the public that level of commitment? And at that time, we started to engage Black, BIPOC, deaf individuals within the community. We asked for that assistance so that we could co-create this, right? So what is this going to look like? And we gathered that evidence, that information. And then ironically, our consultant later became our CIO. But anyhow, at the time, we really drafted something based on that evidence that we received. And then we got it out there. This is what we are going to do. This is what we are committed to. This is where we are going to begin. This is where we ultimately want to see ourselves end up. And what did you start a month ago, or what month? Okay,
September. It's 8 months now. Yeah.
Wow. And admittedly, just someone that's willing to guide an entire organization to drive this goal, to know what that is ultimately. It being white led, I mean, what's the percentage of BIPOC staff that we have now? Are we willing to look at and really have these conversations with our BIPOC staff with what we already have? Our students, looking at that population, looking at our families, the community, and recognizing the importance of being willing to face their answers. It's not easy, guys. And this work is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, but I have to tell you something, it is worth it.
Yes, to your point, as white leaders, you do need to recognize and just think about yourselves as school administrators, as leaders. Who's your team? Who's got your back? Are they Black, brown, BIPOC? And I'm not talking about our classroom IAs or teachers even, but the higher levels, the supervisors, if you will, the managers. So I thought, wow, even putting up a job position and making this available is bold. But that's holding yourselves accountable if you're taking this as serious as you should. And so not just at the Learning Center, but just looking at the system worldwide. We're failing our Black and brown children, Black and brown people, our community. And for a white person to stand up and say that, bold. That's all I have to say. So it begins with ourselves and acknowledging, as white leaders, where do I begin? That's where you begin. It's not about, oh, I'm going to get this book and I'll have this conversation at a book club and we'll bring in a speaker to come and do something. And we'll just, I don't know, we'll have our quarterly meetings. That's just touching the surface. This has to be everyday work. I can't stress that enough. Every single day. So by the time you leave your 8 to 4 job and you clock out, it's not one of those things you leave back at the office. You have to be part of the change, the community, and that's what it means to be a leader in this.
Right. And I think some lessons learned I can share what not to do. Reading books and coming up with those buzzwords such as unpack. Let's unpack. Reading and discussing is just not sufficient. It's not adequate. And prior to her arrival, I wasn't sitting and waiting. We got that information out there. We told the public our plan. And then we reserved an hour and a half every week for 7 months weekly, where the entire leadership team got together and looked at it from a fiscal perspective, right? Hours in the classroom. What is going to be required for this empowerment at the leadership level of this organization? It's going to take time, it's going to take money, and it's going to take people. And it's going to take a commitment of just hours weekly. We're going to read what the public is saying, read what we're putting out there. We need to be held accountable, right? So we have to have these readings, we have to have these discussions, we have to have these applications for 7 months. We were willing to move. We made minimal progress. Nothing. Basically. Yeah, now we have this understanding of vocabulary.
You had some acknowledgement.
Right. There was like a dimly lit situation, but there was no action.
But you were getting there at least.
This is prior to your arrival. Exactly. So I'm talking about how to begin the work. The work does not start with your just reading, right? If we, with 12 administrators, meeting an hour and a half every week for 7 months, that was to get the light on for us to then be able to take action. Again, this was before Kyle Amber's arrival, but that one step, that wasn't sufficient. It was simply not adequate.
Yes, I also want to point out increasing staff diversity. That is relevant. But where are those people? So why am I different? How am I different? I'm a mom of 3 children. My youngest is deaf, a Black deaf child. And they ask, where are the Black teachers? Why am I so different? Is something wrong with me? Why don't I have a teacher? I said, I'm your mother. I'm a teacher. I work at Gallaudet. Yeah, but you're my mom. Where are the teachers that look like me in the classroom? And, that's a common question. Unfortunately, that's asked throughout the nation. And when you have a student of color and asking, why am I different? It's not about why am I different because I'm deaf. It's they're looking in the mirror and they don't see themselves.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you might see a reoccurring theme here. We have to take a bigger look at what's happening, right, to the kids in the classroom. When you see disciplinary issues, so often it's students of color that are being referred to our behavioral health program, which is really unique. We can see the full gamut there and a comprehensive view of their lives and where they're coming from in terms of their family within the Learning Center. We're able to see that. So you can see kids after they're in that treatment program. And you see this common theme, the number of suspensions, disciplinary action, the severity of the discipline as well. It's subconscious, right? But it's there and we're recognizing it more and more.
Yes, more and more for our Black and brown children.
It's not easy to admit. It really is not an easy thing to admit. But you get this sense of urgency that this is important. All right, so we'll talk about this a little bit. So our commitment here, recognizing, taking a look at this information that we have now, what do we do with this data? Where does the work begin? The Learning Center website, we have a link there. The very first one in the drop down, you can take a look at that. You can see examples here of what we're talking about, the postings, etc., our reorg plan, and there's a lot of lessons learned.
Yes, of course. There's so much to learn, even prior to my arrival. You know, when I began, I thought, if you don't understand the system and how that impacts our students, then we can't continue. That's not a starting point, and that's for many of us here, especially when we're talking about, you know, health or you know, well, that's you know, the perpetual harm from, you know, back. That's when it happened back when. No, it's now. It's still happening. Yes, the perpetual harm, because we continue to harm and we're not doing better. So the harm is happening. Is that acceptable? If not, then what do we do? You have to backtrack, have those conversations, change those policies. And when I first arrived, it was like, okay, Amber, Kyle, Amber, we're ready to have our training. No. Well, what programs do you have? You know, what are the issues? What are the challenges that you're all facing? Let's build relationships. And the response was, but this is such a sensitive issue. Right. And so to that point, everyone needs to feel heard.
Right. It's hard. And I think, as you just mentioned, that's white supremacy, that system, that culture, things that are just so easily overlooked. And I said it a few times at the beginning when we started to do this work. I was vulnerable enough to say, I'm new. I just started here. Right. So we're talking about issues that happened 10 years ago. That's not happening anymore. It's devastating. It's heart-wrenching to hear, but we cannot turn back the clock. So how do we transition? How do we transform? But the trauma is still there. So we can't leap ahead before we do the work. So the goal, okay, you tell the board, we want to increase diversity. All right, so increased diversity. Let's take a few steps back. What do we currently have on staff? What positions are welcoming, right? What positions are we asking for Black and Brown community members to apply to? Are they willing to take that risk? Have we earned that right to even approach them and ask for them? We really had to hit the pause button there and take a look at that. We don't want to do more harm if we haven't even done the work yet. So I was appointed in this position. Then what? Being a leader. Okay, so I need to get a better understanding of the strengths here. What are the strengths within this organization, right? Let's use that as leverage to tackle our challenges. Like she mentioned, those weekly meetings that happened for an hour and a half, that was just at the leadership level. And then they looked at me, great, now we got a Black person. All right, here we've got a racial issue. Kyle Amber, what are we gonna do about it? Well, looking at me? Why am I here? So often it's like, well, what is your role? And then at the same time, it's like, well, you're a person of color. Perfect. You know exactly what we need. I don't have all the answers. I'm invested in doing this work, but I got to tell you, the work does not fall on Black and Brown folks. Okay.
Yes, it just can't.
We're here to help you, to drive you to that situation, to spotlight these issues, to spotlight the, right? That terminology. Remember that? Remember that terminology that I used?
Disruptor.
Yes.
The disruptor is here.
The disruptor, yes.
Right. It's that common sense. You know, when we're talking about, you know, racial equity and, you know, maybe I've said the wrong thing. Did I target the student? You know, that kid is Black. Let's go get that Black person and say, can you check in with the Black
Right.
child and make sure they're okay? What do we have? Over 480 students, like, get in line. It just didn't make sense. It felt more comfortable and easy for Kyle Amber to take care of it because we don't want to make any mistakes. You don't want to look like the fool. You're not ready to say sorry. It's just seeing that over and over again really showed that we weren't ready to do the work. But when you establish a plan and it's strategic and you actually have everyone do the work, that's where it really begins. It was a really interesting lesson. And, honestly speaking, we're still learning. Um, you know, they're placed at the top. It's a sea level, and it's not an automatic change because it's still not enough. The power that comes with investment, just having that title isn't enough. To make sure that you have a team that's behind you and giving um, support in that position of power, it's so much harder than we actually thought it would be.
Oh, definitely. Agreed. Agreed. We've talked about a lot of things, right? Hiring somebody, having come in and do trainings.
Yes, and then you were going to take care of it. That was it.
Right. We've got the money, we've got grants, we're all set. But these things are still happening. Why is that? The application hasn't happened just yet. Oh, yeah. I learned about X, Y, and Z. Great. You're able to talk about it. Right. But really, there's so much more that needs to happen. Not just about learning, it's about exchanging experiences and talking about application, having that time to practice. 8 months on the job, I see we got a long way to go through systems and policy, et cetera, and through human connection. Accountability is just simply critical. And that's my job. I'm here to hold people accountable. They don't like it, right? It just happened earlier.
Oh, including me, trust me.
Right. Just this morning, there was, what was it? You become stronger if you allow me to be blunt, if I can call you out, if I can tell you, about X, Y, and Z, and then you being receptive to that. Right. Of course, naturally, there's going to be some resistance to receiving that feedback, but that dialogue is key. You can't just be blunt and share that information and then walk away. We have to have a dialogue and that power of testimony, right? Saying, okay, all right, we've got business, we've got this issue, X, Y, and Z. I said, no, Sarah. We need to have time to listen to these stories. And you saw Sarah, she doesn't have time. She doesn't have time. But the Black and brown community has been waiting for 400 years. Okay. You got time, you don't have the time, that's your problem. I have no problem spotlighting these stories. And my friends are okay with that because I'm a disruptor. Black and brown children need us. Okay. That sense of urgency, sit down, sit with it. And Sarah was like, sit with it. That's what I told her. Sit with it. Sit with the discomfort. Shh. Stop trying to fix. Stop trying to fix. And she's sitting, she's listening. She's a part of this process. She's holding onto the edge of her seat because it's uncomfortable. But now this transition has happened because that's where you really see what needs to be fixed, right? Validation is so important. Sit, listen to these stories so that you can really understand the needs here. Some things you might not be able to fix, but they want that validation from you by sitting there and listening. You develop a rapport, credibility, trust when you do so. Okay, so what are we doing now? This is where we are now. Again, this is an organization with over 400 people, variety of programs. We're not just a school here at the Learning Center. It's not going to take just one person, as Sarah mentioned earlier. I'm not bringing in more Black and brown people to clean house. But at the same time, that said, you have me. right? And I have this harm, and I am here to protect our future employees, for that matter, our children. So we're just at the iceberg right now. We're just at the beginning here. First 8 months, what is tangible, right? Relationship building. The education system, looking at curriculum and what opportunities are there within curriculum. Okay, race, how can we change curriculum? I have to tell you, curriculum, that is a good starting place. You can include books. Think about how you're providing education and what that looks like. Think about those in the classroom, bringing in people that have firsthand experience. Common Core. What does that look like when we're providing that level of education? Measurements, passing tests, et cetera, et cetera. White supremacy is very much embedded in that system. And sometimes we just need to come in, take a deep breath, and share these stories. The power of hearing other stories, it's incredible. Rather than a teacher opening books and giving facts. Well, why? You're not going to have a student challenge facts when they're not applicable to their lives. We're looking at critical thinking, equity, that rapport, that relationship. If you don't have that, that student, they're not going to thrive. They are not going to thrive. Equity is so important. People see color first. It's not about, oh, you know, being blind to that. You see that first. They see that before they even recognize whether you're deaf or not. Autism is something I'm hearing over and over and over again, but I'm like, racism is recognized. Intersectionality is so important. Having a conversation that surrounds intersectionality, racial equity here, myself as a woman, queer, Black. I mean, it goes on. And then, am I better than him because I'm deaf, or because I'm a woman, or because I identify as lesbian, or this or that? I mean, which identity are we talking about? And it doesn't matter. I experience oppression, but to talk about autism, that's a huge issue here. And again, we're a predominantly white institution here. So racism is not discussed as much at the leadership level because they're not experiencing that level of oppression. But we do have a population of Black and brown children here, and they have a voice. They're trying to use that voice. It is time to press pause and pay attention to these students and listen to their stories and their experiences. They have a wealth to share.
Right, if you look at the screen here, it talks about how it applies in the classroom. And yes, it's not what about to fix and what to teach, but you can't even teach if you don't have the answers, if you're not prepared for those questions, if you're not owning the fact that you don't have the answers. You know, most of the leaders are white, most of the folks in the academic field are white, and if you grow up, you know, checking off the list, you know, always getting an A+, this work is the opposite of that. There's no one solution, there's no one answer, and we will never be done. And that's tough for many of us, especially in the academic field.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, we want that grade A, we want the A.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's that report card that, you know, impacts many lives. And those concepts for most of us are very conflicting.
It's true. It's true. I think we've covered most of these items here. I think one significant thing to mention is prior to my arrival, just making space for Black and brown staff during working hours, not you know, after work, creating that space for while they're here. That way that person feels like, wait, I'm being paid, I'm on the clock, and I'm provided this space to have this opportunity to have these conversations. Program leaders need to allow Black and brown community members that space to heal, to vent out any level of frustration, to discuss how they need support in certain areas. At the Learning Center, They need a place where, they can get together. They're here 8 to 5. They have that interaction, but they're a marginalized community. Where's their space in particular? Because if it's not provided, it's not provided out there. So we need to create that space within the system.
Right. Last summer, we began with inviting any of our BIPOC staff, Black, Brown, through Zoom, of course. That was such a challenge in itself. And on top of that, not having all of the resources. But yes, we weren't in person and there was no sense of, human nature in that respect. And on Zoom, it was just me. What did we have? Like 30, 40 people show up? I was shocked. The agenda went out the window. I mean, because there was no agenda. It was about, talk to me. What are we doing? What are we not doing? What do you want me to hear? And as soon as I said, what do you want me to hear? They went at it and gave me their stories, and they were bold, and they had to be. They had to. Oh God, I get chills just thinking about it. But just me and all my BOPIC staff from different programs, some individuals I hadn't met yet. And we did this once a month. And then Kyle Amber joining us, the power in that. Another BIPOC individual working with me, supporting me, doing these meetings together, listening sessions. And almost towards the end, Kyle Amber says, imagine if it was just BIPOC staff. What if it's just us? And they said, yes. Why didn't we think to ask that? Why didn't I think to ask that? And that's when the lights went on. Duh. But it started with the once a month with us. And now we see the shift, and staff are very grateful.
You're more open.
Yes, more open, and holding us accountable.
Oh yeah, they want to see proof.
Oh yeah, they're saying, okay, so when is this going to happen? What's the deadline? When are we going to start? I'm so grateful that I was forced to take that step, that I was forced to be accountable. I have 40 eyes looking at me who have been telling me for months that they're feeling hurt and that they're traumatized. And I had to do something. So being accountable means being ready. It means you're going to do it. And what's missing now is for our students.
Right. I think, just being able to feel like, yes, I matter. I matter at the Learning Center. My life matters. So we need to establish that space for them, the students as well, for that racial equity. But honestly, it requires trust first, above all else. I'm a person of color, but they don't trust me just yet. I have to go to them. I have to prove to them, right? Through vlogs, through being visible. COVID-19, this pandemic has been incredibly difficult. Now that we're back in person, they see me, they're getting a better idea as to who I am. I can create that visibility now. I couldn't before. I think one thing in terms of this dedication, this work, this racial equity plan, this strategic plan, and then the organization strategic plan. And why are they separate? Why isn't that just embedded into the strategic plan? Why isn't it just one? Why is it segregated? That way it's in what you do every day. It's woven in there. We're looking at that racial equity and really driving that need and making it important every day with board approval and looking at the pandemic, right? Racial equity. They should be one and the same here. Because we do see some gaps. So within a couple, 2-3 years, the intention is not to have a sense of urgency. The intention is to recognize pain, to pause, to slow down, to fill in the gaps. to be transparent and to have a plan that has transparency.
Right. And it's typical, for schools to have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. 5 years too many. That's just my own personal opinion. But a 1-year plan, an annual plan that supports that bridge plan, that gives us that time, that will allow us then to find the funding for the organization, to re-audit annually all of our programs. 1 year. Let's look at the gaps. Let's make this plan, then set up that action plan, that 3-year action plan. But let's look at what we have now, what we need, maybe check off the box that first year when we're talking about, scaffolding and merging what we're doing and not doing, because we're not there yet. So you look at the structure, you have a 3-year structure, so be willing to change it. So that for us is starting in July. Yep.
That's right. All right, so I think this one speaks for itself. Naturally, deaf-centric here. We have a lot of good research and data available to us. We want to stress the importance here. Look at the columns, take a look at those. Masters is what this work requires. That can be problematic. That can be an issue because 4.1% of the Black community, right, graduate with that degree. Graduate with a master's, 4.1 of our community. So what's the likelihood that they'll become a teacher? And then look at the others, 11.9 for the Asian community. Latinx, the lowest, 3.8. How many of those are actually becoming educators? It is a nationwide shortage when it comes to being able to even find people of color to teach in our classrooms. This issue isn't just at your school. It's not because they don't want to go to your school. It is a nationwide emergency. There is a sense of urgency here. We need to grow that population. We need to flourish that. Where are they? What does that mean? How do we support? Is it mentorship that needs to happen? I look at my kids in the K through 12 sector. They don't have those role models. Why are they going to become teachers when they themselves don't look at their teacher and see that that could be a potential career for them? And that licensure is a struggle for so many of our deaf individuals here. So again, that system is oppressing that as well with the rigor. What does it mean to become a teacher? That is an issue. That's a problem.
Right. There are systemic barriers already for teachers, deaf teachers or potential deaf teachers. Then you add that layer of being a teacher of color, the licensing that's required between states, even when you go to one state and you can't teach at that state because you have a license with, it's so unfair. And it creates those barriers, maybe if we can all do this together and not as just one organization. If you can't today, then what can we do with what we already have currently? Mentoring sessions, for example. So many have said, you could be such a great teacher. Fine, then how are we supporting our IAs, for example, who could become a teacher? Where's the funding? Where's the support that they need to move up, to build and grow within?
Right, that comes back to that relationship building. That comment, you would make a great teacher. That comment in itself, you've planted that seed with that individual. Why don't you go back to school? Hey, what do you need? Why is there that hesitancy there to continue to do the work? support them the best that you can, right? I think oftentimes students of color struggle because they don't receive enough praise. They're told they can't. There's that history of being told because of their deafness, because their color of their skin. Tell them that they're doing a great job. Ask them what they envision for their future. Ask them if they'd be interested in working at a place like this, at your school. Again, it comes back to that human connection, but we're all engaged in this rat race, that to the point where we're forgetting to take a pause and to just have these conversations.
Yes, and just to add to that, when you start to open up and unpack and look and present and train and have those conversations, ask questions that haven't been asked. For example, a deaf teacher maybe struggling to, or working on getting their license and struggling, um, many, but in many different states, not just at our school. And it's heavy English based. Are we saying, let's provide tutoring? Don't even, not even ask, just provide it, right? You know, and you don't know this until you have these conversations with your BIPOC staff. The commonality, the theme, and tutoring. They've had to pay for their own tutoring.
Oh
because
yeah.
our policy, or we're just assuming people know, or oh well, they never asked. We're going to assume that they're going to ask. That level of privilege that you just assume that everyone has access.
Not necessarily, but also I think white individuals knowing how to seek that information. They've got those resources at the tip of their fingers. And like I've said, I'm talking about my people in particular, people of color within our community. We've had to fend for ourselves to make a living. If we make a mistake, that could cost me my job. I'm sorry. What was that? Oh, we just?
No, something's going on. It looks like a phone call came through. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where was I?
Losing your job.
Right. There's an inconsistency there. I have to be incredibly cautious with my position. And we don't ask for help often. If you ask for help, that shows that your level of incompetence, right? And so they're like, no, do it yourself. You're strong. You can do it. It's told to us in a very implicit way, right? So don't say certain things. Are you aware of this? Do you know? I know many deaf schools throughout the nation are providing ASL classes for hearing teachers. Why isn't the same provided for deaf teachers? Assistance with passing the licensure within their state, that's not provided to deaf students, or deaf teachers rather. Help them enhance their English skills, those literacy skills, so that they can best pass that test. Cultivate that within our deaf community. That would be nice to see.
Yes, when we start with numbers like 4.1 and it only gets smaller.
Oh, I know.
Every person of color on your staff is viable, and replacing them with another BIPOC, how? There isn't anyone out there. There are no resources. The industry isn't providing it. So let's think about what we can do now, today, with the staff that we have, because once they leave us, there are no replacements.
Maybe just click end session. Is that it? Oh, see, the technical issues just continue. Money talks. I'm going to tell you, quite frankly, money talks. I said to Sarah, all right, do we have the budget? Money talks. To have this dedication, that's one thing, but we also need the money. And I don't mean temporary funding where when that money exhausts itself, then that program is obsolete. No. If you want this job, if you want more, if you want this, if you want that, you need the money to back it up. Create a budget line item, reallocate your funding so that you have the money to support this goal. And so that means you're going to have to talk to those that are above you. superintendents, educational leaders, and don't just accept we don't have the money. That's a cheap way to say we really don't care. We just don't care. The money's out there. There's a wealth of resources, fiscally speaking, out there. Work harder, research more, do more homework, get people within CEASD, which is an awesome phenomenon within this organization. Ask others, ask your colleagues, share the resources. Don't be shameful. Don't feel humiliated. Ask that. Hey, let's exchange your resources. How are you doing? Our deaf community is small. We need each other.
Right, that budget, that's a lesson learned for myself. You challenged me now. When you said, so what's the budget? And I said, well, how much do you need? And you asked, well, how much are you willing to invest in this? And I thought, okay, but you're still not telling me, what you need, resources, how much, and we can find it. And you asked again, well, what are you willing to spend? How much are you willing to give me? What is my budget? You tell me. And you flipped it on me. And I thought you would tell me what to do and I would just find you money and say thank you. But no, you forced me to invest in this work. Complete role reversal. We just had this conversation last week.
It's true. It's true. Here you go. This is it. Oh,
yeah, I was just going to say, oh my God, anyone who knows me, okay, but many of you don't, but those who know me and know my personality, I'm not shy. I'm assertive. I work fast and I lead. I'm trained to lead. So if no one's going to do it and we don't have time to wait because there's things to do, I'll take the lead. But this work is collective. There's no title in the room. Oh my gosh, this experience for me,
it's true.
I'm still learning this lesson. I haven't arrived. We're not going to arrive. That's what I have to remember, that it's a journey.
It's a lifelong process.
You can get an F, like a big fat F. There's no A+, but you can get that F for sure. Just wow. Definitely a learning curve for me, for the Learning Center. Even sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm too nervous right now. I can't even talk about it. Let me just pretend like I'm taking notes, or let me take notes so I can just keep my hands busy.
Yeah,
because when we're talking about, okay, so what's next? I have to be told, like, just hold your horses. We're getting there. We have to have a conversation. I'm not used to having a conversation. It's a different type of leadership.
Going in with a blank slate, right? That's a challenge.
Oh, that is so not my way. Not my way at all. I got some great feedback from other leaders that said, feedback. I know, okay, I know what you mean, but just, what do I say? Save the fluff for when you're talking to the board, pretty much, okay? But when you're talking with your leaders and it's in-house and you're working together, get down and dirty, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Bring in the BIPOC community for feedback. Have those conversations. And this is the first time they're being asked for their opinion ever. In how many years? Wow. And it's something that we can change today.
It's true.
And there's work to be done. We can do it right now.
Mm-hmm. Just sit down and have the conversation. Absolutely. So I want you to read this and do some reflection here. So do you see this term here about thyself? I asked her about this and she said, no, I know. I'm like, no, you don't. Just a few weeks ago, last month, back in April, our neighbor, 16-year-old, lost her life, hung herself with a belt, was not spotlighted. Family was screaming for help. They did an independent investigation on that case. That was right next door. I said, Sarah, this happened next door to us. Could have been one of our kids next door. This was essentially our backyard. You know, not making the headlines, but this is in our backyard. This work is critical, folks. You may not think that it hits close to home. It could happen in your backyard. It could happen in your school. It happened in ours just last month. And that's a reminder to be intentional. When you see things observing, or when you observe things in your community, don't be a bystander. Post about it. Okay, hashtag, great. That's not enough. It's not sufficient. Create action. We are relying on our white allies for this action to occur. So racial equity planning, it needs to be within the school-wide organization, embedded in what everyone does. These human bodies create this action plan. So if something doesn't work, back up. What's working, what's not working? It's a living document. You're not married to this document. Things can ebb and flow and change accordingly. But to see shift, really, we can just practice some reflection. Wait a minute, weren't we just here? And now we're here. Along the journey, you will feel frustrated, of course. Appreciate your small wins, the small shifts. Kids are happy. You see a child smile. Somebody says something. A sweet email is shared. Small wins. And those build over time. Build over time to the point where you see a cultural shift. People are scared to unpack. That's good. It's good to be scared. It's critical to ask yourself, wait a minute, are you in here? Yeah, full steam ahead. Hold on. Where's that social space? As a white person, as a white male, as a white deaf person, who's on my staff? Who's on my team? Who am I inviting to the table? Is there sufficient diversity here? We don't have the word diversity in a slide because equity speaks to that. That's organically housed in that term, right? You can't have equity without diversity. It's just simply not possible. It's not feasible. So, and that includes inclusion as well. Are we including this? That includes diversity. If you have equity and inclusion, diversity is there. It's a moot point. You don't have to say diversity explicitly. It's implied. You can't have equity and inclusion without diversity. We are committed, but it requires so much more. So ask yourself about X, Y, and Z. And if you're unsure, have those conversations with your colleagues. Start there. Hey, I've realized I don't know what I don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Again, those stories, they're powerful. Sit down, Sarah, right? Hard for somebody that is a doer, right? It's really hard, but just listen to get a better idea of the picture that we're talking about. Do you feel it? Yes, I feel it. Yes, I feel it. That's their experience. We're looking for empathy. Be empathetic. That's what these children want. And it's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's uncomfortable. Exactly. Imagine what it was like to be in their shoes. They experienced this. Think about who's at the table. Think about who has stories to share. And offer them a seat at the table, if not already.
I think it's powerful, that knowledge of shifting that knowledge, being white and woke, really. Living in California and such a diverse population, I didn't know what I was missing.
Right in front of you here.
Yes, and Kyle Amber with her stories. Sometimes they worked that way and they were just short and sweet, and sometimes they went on. And I say, okay, so was it A? No, You missed the point. Okay, sorry. So now I got to tell the story again. But just two things. For CDO, right? We start there. Job description, diversity, changing that. It can become a trend, because you want to use those buzzwords and make sure it's in there good enough. Let's hire someone. But no, this would be starting from a different place.
Right. And then equity also includes intersectionality. I think that's important that we do recognize that people of color, Indigenous, Black, Brown, deaf as well. So we can't push that aside. We can't dismiss that. We have to recognize that. A white deaf student has a different experience as opposed to a student of color the same age, but they're in the same school, same class. Why is the treatment different? Recognizing that that's an inequity. What do we do about that inequity? So we do have to stress that as well.
I think it's power of empathy. Of course, if, we're all in a nonprofit, for example, we're already naturally prone to empathy, but it's not automatic. You have to learn that lesson. It's based on what you see, what you understand. I subscribe to information that I get, and I look through the pages.
The captions.
Yes. And look at the language and get to the point. It's like, oh, that was disturbing what I just read, because empathy is also being intentional.
I feel like, are we past our time? What time is it? Is it 25? Do we have 15 minutes? Is that right?
3.
I apologize. We've gone on and on a little bit.
Yeah, see how we go on with our stories. Let us know if we're over time or if we're okay. If someone, we don't see anyone, can you just send a quick chat? All right, we can talk a little bit about this.
The notion of transparency, right? How many Black and Brown administrators do you have here at the Learning Center?
Students?
No, administrators.
School administrators. Oh, 0.
How many students of color do you have here?
I don't know the answer to that.
Think about how many Black, Brown educators. How many do you have?
2. Current 3. Teachers, that is 3. We have many more students of color than staff.
That's the point.
Right. I mean, I could tell you the exact number of educators we have in general, but 2 BIPOC in higher positions.
Right. And that goes back to that perpetuating the whiteness in deaf education, right? Put her on the spot. She had to think about it. Unsure, right? Uncertain. How many of you can put yourself in Sarah's shoes? How many do we have? Or if you do know those numbers, one step ahead, what are you doing about that? I want to challenge you. Think about, what are you doing about that disproportionate number there? Black and brown. If you have this number of students, your teacher population should reflect that number. But that is the importance. Look at the why here. If you look at those bullet points, our children, our students, they matter. They matter. They are reliant on all of us. We're here existing. We have educators. We have those that love teaching. They're just white. Do we push them to the side? No. Just acknowledge the fact, hey, you know what? I know I'm white. I've got work to do. I also recognize that, but I am here. And sometimes that's just not enough. And that it is what it is.
Yeah, we have 10% staff of color. Almost half of them are deaf, but that's just 10% BIPOC. And the statistics, based on all the work that we've done thus far, comparing to others, 10% is high. Really?
Oh, it's not good to me. It's not acceptable, quite honestly. It's just not acceptable.
I'm with you. I think that last line, look at who is and isn't at the table.
You see who
Does
are.
it say? Oh, are.
Do you know why that is? Because we know it's not singular. We know it's, oh, let's get this box checked. One person's going to fix it all. No.
Right. Well, did we have a Black person on the interview committee? Oh, they work at that other program, but they're Black. We got them. They know nothing about this position that we're interviewing for or the interview process. But yeah. So let's just grab a random Black person off the street and really.
Mm-hmm. It's happened to me.
So look at who's at the table. When I'm conferencing with my staff, we've begun with talking about the BIPOC students and meeting with them, and oh my goodness. Just meeting with your staff alone, but prepare yourself when you meet with your students.
Mm-hmm. And I think you have to first begin with that trust. They're going to come in wary. I'll be quite honest. They will come in quite wary. Even with my role, what am I doing? Looking at Sarah. Wait, there's two? I call her the head honcho here. And then there's me working in tandem with her. They're asking why. But at the same time, I've got this privilege, right? Wait, I want her to hear my story. They come in not with that attitude. They come in wary. It's like, wait, time out. Hold on one second. You got to go back to class. Once they're told that they've got to go back to class, they're so disappointed. They just wanted to go on and on for days.
Right. When is our next one?
I know we have so many scheduling conflicts. Just added. Oh, do you see that? She asked me. Okay, well, I guess with my position, I don't know. I'm being ironic here. I'm being sarcastic, but you have to carve out that time. You have to schedule that time for your students. And right now I'm thinking, hey, okay, let's set it up. Let's do it. Let's take the time. It's a beautiful day. Let's get outside. Especially with COVID-19, people are back in person. You have that opportunity to do this in person.
Yes, and a previous meeting, we're talking about my love language, time and attention. And, it shows me that you care when you give me your time, your attention, when you listen. So just, if nothing else, just to give them that time.
Oh, as I mentioned earlier, the fiscal means, right? Having budget line items, not just talking to your staff to finagle what costs are necessary, but talking to your youth, to the students. All right. Trying to just do that kind of career pulse. Hey, what kind of careers are you interested in? So that you can invite people in to speak to those careers. Okay, well, we don't have the time, you don't have the money. You take the time, you find the money. It's as simple as that.
Start with the small wins.
Exactly. I mean, I know people are zoomed out, people are over it, but we're really blessed to have this opportunity to meet with people nationwide. They don't even have to come here physically. Hey, can we take an hour of your time? Just need you on Zoom. Partner with the community. Locally speaking, at the end of the day, we're going to give back to the hearing folks, to the hearing people, right? People that don't know much or anything about the deaf community. That just, oh, I'm sorry, Jeff is trying to say something. Oh, he's telling us we need to.
Oh, yeah, we're out of time. Are we? Okay. 10 minutes.
Do we have 10 minutes? No. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, what was that before? Yes. Okay, let's do that. Perfect. Okay, no, he's saying no. Okay, sure.
So can we share the PowerPoint?
Sure.
Is that what you'd like us to do? Jeff says, yeah, sure, send it to Barbara or myself. And we'll include the videos and share that with everyone.
All right. So should we do the video?
Well, let me ask a quick question. This is Jeff.
Okay, do you want to stop sharing screen? Would that be easier?
Yeah, that sounds good because then we can see one another better.
Oh my goodness, everybody's time. Oh, we cannot see
Yeah.
them. Hold on 1 second.
All right, so, but there's a question from Mark Carlson. Have you addressed students of regarding stability or stabilism in your community? Ableism, that is.
Very interesting. This with Derek Chauvin's trial, this came up, the 3 charges. We decided to have a conversation with our students to really talk about that experience and what was happening, with shootings and had the situation where they relied on the students or the child to interpret. We had conversations around surrounding those 2 things that were kind of spotlighted with Derek Chauvin's trial, but also talking about concerns with the privileges here, the accessibility to, escape, not asking for consent, picked him up, took off, didn't ask. They felt that was really important. I was wowed by that. So often people think, okay, wait a minute, racial equity, that's what you do. And that's a struggle that I have because I'm like, can we talk about other equity issues? Yes, that's a line of my work as well. Not just racial equity, but just equity as it applies to all areas. And another area that we were talking about recently is, Learning Center is well known for their Special Olympics. So we've got the gym, and around the gym, you see athletics or athletes spotlighted everywhere. What about Special Olympics? So somebody mentioned that to me. I thought, wow, thank you for sharing that. You just need to open the space for those conversations to happen, and other things are going to come up along the way. Don't tell them to hold on, we'll deal with it later. Tell them thank you for sharing, reach out to them, follow up so that they know that you are addressing these issues, that it's a work in progress, and it wasn't an isolated conversation.
I can't see her.
So leaders talking about primary goal. That was, what was it? The first time we met, it was the first thing that came up. So just the power of inviting those conversations to happen, that invitation.
Excellent. Any other questions from anyone? This is Jennifer. I do.
Oh,
Hi, hello. I do have a question. I'm very curious. When you began talking about your leadership group in the book, did you get guidance or did you partner, outsource? How did you establish that 1 hour, 1.5 hour, book club, if you will? And which books would you recommend that we can begin with, or what you think helped with your group the most?
okay. Well, how we got there, we're laughing over here, so sorry.
Right, because it evolved, and it was actually a lesson learned, if anything else.
Right. So before I arrived, I called it the book club. All right, we read, we discuss, we read, we discuss. I'm like, I'm not coming into the picture with this. I want to bring in stories, live testimonies, racial equity. I want to hear about the people that are experiencing this. She was like, really? I said, oh yeah, they're out there. Have you invited the people to come in and talk about their experiences? So you have to set up group norms for buy-in to happen, right? People need to feel comfortable. So you need group norms. You have the book club. That was it was doable. How effective was it? Maybe at the superficial level, but people really didn't take time. Okay, let's talk about this philosophy here. I don't really care about that. What are we doing in our organization? What are we doing with our students in the classroom? What are our educators doing? What are our principals doing? What does this application look like? How is this coming to fruition? So I know that it's hearing centric oftentimes, more often than not, but how does that apply to our community? Right. So having those applications, if you're having a, so to speak, book club, I think now we've done a lot of reading. Right. Did you? Yeah, you did share on the website. If you look over there, equity and inclusion, you'll also see a drop down of ideas and resources, articles that you can read. So there's literature available. I think most importantly, structurally speaking, I kind of get a little angsty because time constraints come as a result. All that's not within my comfort zone. I can only talk about this. I can't talk about X, Y, and Z, but I challenge you to bring in several perspectives and having some type of structure to recognize that, sometimes no structure is good, right? It can be painful, but that pain you need to get through, that needs to happen.
Right,
So
and you know where you're at. Yep.
To see where people are at in their journey. And sometimes you might bring in people and they're not willing to speak, and that can create resentment. But we have to be committed to this work every week, right? Just asking for an hour and a half so that we can see these daily applications. You are accountable to have these conversations and not set it aside till we meet again. No, weave this into your program, weave this into everything that you do so that we are just a drop in the bucket. We are hoping for ripple effects here. And so how do these changes happen? The book club, you don't just wash your hands clean and just, okay, well, our hour and a half is over.
Right.
See you next.
I mean, two things when we're talking about tools. When you get together, when you're talking about the work, use I statements. There's an article from safe space to brave space.
Right.
Right. The group norms are so different. We found that one to be more proactive. Doing the uncomfortable work. Absolutely. Calling one another out or in, or just looking at what's lacking. And white individual groups as well. It's called Me and White Supremacy. So there's a slew of topics in there. Just even looking at one sentence, you needed like 2 minutes to really look at it and talk through it. While staff during their journey and when they're unpacking, not bringing in people who are, BIPOC and they see as a threat, but working with one another, holding white people accountable.
Did that answer your question? I hope that answered her question. I also put it in the equity and inclusion website information there in the chat. I know we're out of time. This is a critical conversation and a conversation that needs to be ongoing. So I look forward to this level of partnership. CEASD board has also discussed maybe having a meeting where we have that equity and inclusion and we have leaders from each school engage in a conversation. So I look forward to that coming to fruition eventually. Thank you so much for sharing your work. I think it's awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome work. We appreciate it. Thank you on behalf of CEASD board. Thank you to everyone for being here, part of the Zoom conference today and this past year. Look forward to seeing you on June 3rd with a good wrap up. Hard to believe we're at the end of this year. My goodness. Hopefully nearing the end of this pandemic and nearing a fall that will be very different. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy.